Okay, so we are going to be rolling through, like I said, a FanDuel first look for week 3 of the NFL DFS season. Neither Josh or I have taken a look at this slate. It's always what we like to do without any previous experience on Monday afternoons with you guys. So we'll be going to be going position by position, breaking down some of the favorite plays that we have per tier of each slate. So we won't be going super in depth, but it's enough to cover kind of what sticks out to us from a pricing perspective and matchups. Because again, we have no idea what's on the slate to start out until we start looking at it right now. And as we can see, Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook both are more expensive than any other player on the slate. We're going to start at quarterback though, Josh. So let's take a look at the quarterback options here, sitting above 8K. Now we have Kyler Murray here against Jacksonville. Seems like the obvious pay up spot here. He's extremely priced up at 9,000. He's been increasingly going up in price. I believe he was 8,200 week 1 and then 85 last week, somewhere in that range. So now he's sitting at 9,000, which again almost took the entire season last year for quarterbacks to get up that high. Do you think we can pay up for Kyler in the spot where he's now had back-to-back 34-point FanDuel point performances?
100% you can pay up for this guy and feel good about paying up for this guy too. Even at a 9K price tag, I still don't know if we're seeing the ceiling yet. I mean, we talked about it last week. 5 rushing attempts is not what he should be getting. It should be anywhere between 8 and 12. And so if that's the case, you can add on more rushing attempts. You can add on more yardage. He's obviously going to be throwing the ball 30 plus times every week. And he's been relatively accurate through throwing the ball those 30 times. So there's no reason not to trust in Kyler in this number 1 spot. I really like Kyler. I think that he's an amazing play this week. He gets the Jaguars defense. We've seen them absolutely torched over the past 2 weeks. We saw Teddy Bridgewater have a day against them last week. And then we saw Tyrod Taylor have a day. And Tyrod Taylor had a day on the ground as well. It did really well with his QB rushes.
Yeah. I was going to say he hit value before he even got hurt.
Exactly. So like it's an amazing spot for Kyler Murray here. I think he surpasses this value again at 9K.
Agreed. So for me, the main thing I want to highlight here is that he does have 2 rushing touchdowns to start off the year in both games. Now, the interceptions I think it'll get better, especially starting in this spot. He's played in 2 shootout matchups. Well, I shouldn't say shootout. Last week was a shootout, so I can see a little bit more why the interceptions were there. Again, the pass attempts are in a good range. The passing yards are really impressive for Kyler. That was always an issue. This Arizona team has now figured out finally that they can stretch the field with some of their playmakers. They don't always have to rely on DeAndre Hopkins to run bubble screens. Now they have electrifying guys like Rondale Moore, like Chase Evans out of the backfield. Like they have, DeAndre is actually able to go out and be that wide receiver 1. Christian Kirk looks good to start the year as well. So for me, I'm mostly encouraged by this rushing number because if he's having 34 and 35 FanDuel point games with only 5 rushing attempts and 20 to 30 rushing yards, just imagine he finds that one spot where he goes off for 12 rushing attempts for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, it's coming. The spot is coming where he gets both 200, 300 passing yards and 100 rushing yards. This could be the spot, even though they might end up blowing Jacksonville out of the water. I still think that he gets there regardless of the blowout scenario, because in the NFL, if you want to blow out a team, you got to do it by at least three scores, and I think that they do it here. Moving down the list, just guys that we have seen or could talk about. We won't highlight them necessarily, but Mahomes against LA is interesting. Let's see if Patty can keep his September streak going. Russell Wilson against Minnesota. We just saw that shootout of a game. That smells like a shootout type of game now in week 3. Baltimore versus Detroit. If Lamar Jackson could do what he did last night against Kansas City, I can't even imagine what he's going to do against Detroit. So, very interesting spot. And then Josh Allen finally against Washington. Not the best matchup on paper, Josh Allen, but back-to-back 17-point FanDuel games. Josh, just before we move on to these quarterbacks below 8K, just touch on the fact that I think we're already kind of seeing this Lamar versus Kyler in week 3 play out. Okay, I think we lost Josh, guys. But for me, I'm going to continue going on this stream here, and we're going to be talking about, honestly, I kind of want to discuss, again, Kyler versus Lamar here. Lamar went ballistic last night, 16 rush attempts, 107 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. I mean, I think this dude's all the way back, and like you can't even say that he had a bad week on the ground last week. It was mostly because those touchdowns came in through the ground. So yeah, early look says that Kyler Murray's the better play in cash, but I think that Lamar Jackson is an excellent pivot option for tournaments and possibly even for cash games. Now, yeah, so I guess we'll move down the list because I think that it's between one of these two guys, and obviously don't count out Mahomes. He's in play for cash too. I'm not really concerned about his status, and we saw Dallas be able to move the ball pretty well through the air. That game should have a lot of points scored in it too. Okay, moving down the list here, we do have the QBs below 8K. We have a Tom Brady, a Kirk Cousins against Seattle. I like that game environment. We got Matt Stafford and the Rams taking on the Tampa Bay Bucks. It's probably one of the games of the week, if I had to guess. Yep, they're at 425 on Sunday. Yeah, so we're going to see it, guys, again. We're going to see two major shootouts here at the end of the slate. Tampa Bay, LA versus and Seattle versus Minnesota. So, Josh, I was just talking about, we were just wrapping up the talk between Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson for FanDuel Cash for this first segment. I think I side with Kyler Murray, but I want to get your thoughts here because Lamar's upside obviously was shown last night yet again.
Yeah, his upside was definitely shown last night yet again. I think it is going to be kind of predicated on what we see from Detroit today. You know, are they able to at least somewhat contain Aaron Rodgers, even without Jeff Okudah, their cornerback number one? So, I'm interested to see what Detroit does today on offense. I still lean towards Kyler, but we know that Lamar can put up crazy scores. We saw that last night. We saw that he is the RB1 for this team. So I'm not going to say it all depends on what we see from Detroit tonight, but I feel like you can almost guarantee 100 plus rushing yards from him. And if that's the case, then maybe he does fall into line, getting that $600 savings. I mean, we'll talk about what that $600 savings can do for you, but I'm sure it could do a lot for you at the running back position and the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe it's a spot where they increase their pricing difficulty a little bit on FanDuel, but over the last 2 weeks, we've had no issues trying to fit in everybody we want to fit for the most part. Comments from the chat. Little Italy says that you are looking like you're about to cut a rap album, Josh. It's Hoodie Josh Day, guys.
Yeah, just Hoodie Josh Day. Any day we lose, it's going to be Hoodie Josh Day. Or any day we're coming off of a losing Sunday, for me, it's going to be Hoodie Josh Day, just like Hoodie Mellow. So we're coming in motivated this week. It's to show that motivation.
Love it. Okay, we're talking about guys in the 7K range from 71 to 78. Obviously, I just mentioned Tom Brady against Matt Stafford. Then you also have Kirk Cousins, who looked, and I'm going to pull up this FanDuel score before I say this. Yeah, I can't. I don't even know if I can say elite. This is probably like a Kirk Cousins type of stealing game outside of that fumble. In classic Vikings fashion, they also lost before getting to overtime. But yeah, I mean, Kirk is definitely solid for what this price tag is, though, and the matchup. So I would not mind to going there in tournaments, but definitely not a cash play. Moving down the list, Josh, any guys stick out to you in this 7K range?
Yeah, the guy that everyone's kind of underestimating and kind of the Dak of this season, in all honesty, ends up being Derek Carr for this Raiders team. Especially if we do see Josh Jacobs injured again, I expect them to use the pass a lot, just like we saw against Baltimore and just like we saw against the Steelers. And those are both really tough defenses, right? Those are defenses that if you told me at the beginning of the year that Dak threw for, hold on, pulling it up in front of me, 400 yards against Baltimore and 380 yards against Pittsburgh, I would say you're on bath salts and get out of here. And that's a crazy take. But the guy's been red hot. The guy's been throwing the ball a ton. And I think that he's right back in play. This Miami team will be a tough matchup, but I think those matchups were tougher in all honesty. So I like this spot for Carr. I think that he can have a lot of success, especially if they continue to use the air raid. And yeah, I think at 7,200, this is a good price tag for him.
Yeah, Miami's beat up on both sides of the ball, and they just lost their starting quarterback. So I can get behind this. And then obviously, Josh Jacobs' news was huge for the passing game for the Raiders. They were able to torch the Steelers every which way, which is actually pretty impressive. And I know the Steelers were down some defensive players as well, but they should have no issues with Miami this weekend. Let's look ahead now towards the guys that are in the value spot, 7K and below. We do have Jared Goff against Baltimore. Obviously, wait and see approach for tonight. I want to see how they battle adversity and come back. I know that we saw it once already, but can he continue to do this? Because obviously, Detroit has 3 incredibly tough matchups to start off this season with San Francisco, Green Bay, and now Baltimore in week 3. So this is probably a tournament's only spot, obviously, for Goff, but I want to see what he does against this team moving forward. Astro, coming through again. Gifting 5 tier subs. Dude, you already gifted 10 this morning. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. And appreciate everybody that got a sub. Josh, let's talk about some guys in this range. I think the one that sticks out to me, outside of Goff, who really wasn't in play for me, is going to be a guy like Ryan Tannehill.
Yep, you took my name right from me. I think the Tannehill at 7K is kind of the result of bad touchdown variance. I mean, you look at what he did in week 1, he only had that 1 passing touchdown, but it was a tough week for the offense as a whole. And then week 2, the offense looked a lot better against Seattle, but he didn't get a touchdown purely because Derrick Henry was the guy who ended up getting a lot of those end zone carries. So I think Tannehill in this spot, if he has a similar performance to what he had against Seattle, you should expect 3 touchdowns from him, at least 2 touchdowns from him. And if he gets 2 touchdowns with that performance, he vastly outperforms the 7K price tag that he's at right now. So I like this spot for Tannehill, man, at 7K. And honestly, I could totally see them going to the air game a little bit just because that Colts team has a very strong front 7 with DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard, and a lot of other talented guys there. Kwity Paye as well. So I could definitely see them going a little bit, trying to attack those corners that have been burnt all season, all the last 2 weeks so far.
Yep, we saw Cooper Kupp absolutely destroy that team's secondary last week as well. This is a healthy number for Ryan Tannehill, 40 pass attempts. 347 through the air is also very solid. So again, having 0 touchdowns in the passing game and on the ground for Ryan Tannehill is not something you're going to see very often. We'll see it on those Derrick Henry games, which is why he scored 45 FanDuel points yesterday. Those touchdowns had to go somewhere. Sometimes I'm glad that he's actually underpriced for this matchup. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good matchup to be underpriced in, right? I think this is a good tournament spot for him.
Okay, some things we have to mention, and I know it's Monday, and I know we're overreacting to news that happened on Sunday, but I do want to note that we had a lot of quarterbacks that got hurt over the weekend. We had Carson Wentz, who sprained both ankles and still wanted to come in and play, but the coaches said no. They get Tennessee this week. The starter, my guess, Josh, is going to be Jacob Brissette because Sam Ehlinger did get he had an IR, not season-ending injury, but an IR injury in the preseason last game. So Jacob Brissette would be the starter in case Carson Wentz was not in play here against Tennessee. I love the matchup. Can't say I'm going to go there, but I love it. So it could be a DraftKings play if this holds out. Other quarterbacks that need to be noteworthy here. Chicago. So the Chicago-Cleveland, we had Andy Dalton, who had sustained an injury. So it could be Justin Fields' time to take under center against Cleveland. And then you also have Baker Mayfield, who's going to be in this game, who had a shoulder injury, and now he's day-to-day. So I'm very interested to see what your thoughts are on this game, because actually we could see some value pieces in it from a quarterback standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know how willing I am going to be to go to some of these value pieces. I don't know. It kind of depends all on these injury designations. I think Fields could potentially be in play, but I think the thing holding me back is that if Baker is going to be out for this game due to his injuries, then this Browns team, what do? They're going to focus on running the ball and running it a ton. And it makes sense, too, because Landry has potential to be out. We found out this morning that Stefanski said that it's an MCL injury. So it looks like it's going to be week to week. He could be out 2 to 3 weeks. And if that's the case, then even more reason to focus on the run, right? Even more reason to just line it up, keep giving the ball to Chubb, play Hunt. We saw D'Ernest Johnson look really good yesterday as well in that backfield. And that worries me because that's going to be a lot of time of possession for that Cleveland team. And there is absolutely no reason why they couldn't run all over Chicago. We saw that Chicago's run defense is just not going to be very good this season. So That's the thing that scares me. I feel like this Cleveland team could do a really good job of just saying, all right, we know we're down at QB. We know we're down with our pass catching options. We don't have Odell. We don't have Jarvis. Let's run the ball. Let's jam it down their throats. Let's take up time of possession and kind of just keep Fields off the field. Not to mention, I haven't really been impressed from what I've seen from Fields. I know he's a rookie, and you can't really say you've been impressed with a lot of rookies. I mean, Zach Wilson in this range threw 4 picks against the Patriots, but like, we saw him turn over the ball twice. We saw him throw an interception, a bad interception in my opinion. We saw him have a forced fumble, and we didn't see much accuracy. So like, we're seeing someone that when he gets pressure put on him, he really does tend to struggle. And you won't see, there's not many places where you're seeing more pressure than with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney rushing you
awful
for
matchup,
the majority of the
matchup.
game.
Yeah. They're gonna, if he starts, they are gonna wreck him into pieces. I just, oh man.
This is similar to like when they put Tua in against
similar.
the Rams last year.
Yep.
It's like I know you have to in this situation because he's injured, but it's going to hurt him in the long game. Like, he's not going to look good in this week if he does have to start.
I agree with you completely. That's going to be a very, very juicy Wednesday, Thursday, Friday segment for you guys. So make sure to keep an eye on that as the week moves forward. Now, obviously, before we move to running back, I just have to note that obviously Tua is also dealing with an injury. So we saw Jacoby Brissette come in for the majority of the game once he left. He probably would be the starter if they had to make a move there. Again, Jacoby is, I would say, in the acceptable tier of backup quarterback play, enough to where it might not tank your season depending when that happens. So I think Josh agrees with me to a point, but I also see you smiling at the same time.
No, I was just I was thinking about the fact that Case Keenum is going to be the backup for the Browns.
Dude,
like, we talk about the level of difference between backup QBs. Jacoby Brissett, good backup QB. I think that's a top 5 backup QB in the NFL, most likely, once you rank them all out. But Case Keenum has to be towards the bottom of that list. So that's why I was smiling, and I thought it was interesting.
Case Keenum, the game manager. Just hand the ball off 40 times, you'll be good in this spot.
Yep, exactly.
All right, let's move on to running back here. Let's talk about guys that are at the top of the list from 7.5K all the way up the top to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry faces the Colts. It's a matchup that he sees 2 times a year. I'm not first glance, I'm not like too stoked about it because I would like a better price tag, but obviously the sites did not hesitate to rank him up there. He has now first game was kind of a dud. Second game, absolute banger of a performance. 35 rushing attempts and 6 targets out of the backfield with 6 receptions. So this dude had 40 touches yesterday. So a lot of that has to do with the fact that the game script was what it was. Can these two teams have that kind of game script, Josh? And do you think that you'd be going to a guy like Derrick Henry versus maybe a guy like Dalvin Cook or Nick Chubb in this range?
I think I most likely look elsewhere, right? Like, I'd rather get Dalvin Cook in the same exact spot that we just saw Derrick Henry in, where Dalvin Cook can absolutely obliterate that team and their defensive line. Where Derrick Henry does have a tough matchup, and a tough matchup where, like you said, he sees them 2 times a year. So we have a good sample size of games against the Colts, and he's okay, but not great, right? We have one game where he had 37 FanDuel points. An incredible game. It was the most recent game last year, but that was a November game. We all know that Derrick Henry gets better as the season goes on because guys get tired on defense, and he's able to take advantage of that. We've also seen a lot of games that he's been held under 20. 3 out of the last 5 games he's played against this Colts team, he's been held under 20 FanDuel points. Getting held under 20 FanDuel points will not get the job done at 9,700. So I know it's early. Maybe I don't land on this take, but maybe I think I'm going to be on a fade spot. And I see you shaking your head, so maybe you're not in agreement with me.
I'm shaking my head because of it's not a spot I really want to target the Colts in necessarily. And the fact that if he gets you, I think I was shaking my head at the fact that if he gets you 1 touchdown and 100 yards, it still doesn't pay off value. So that's kind of how crazy that needs to go. It's also why I was a little bit lower on Nick Chubb last week for the same exact reason. But the signs of life are coming to Derrick Henry in the passing game. Was that just a one-time thing because of the game script and just the way that they were able to use him in the offense? maybe. I'm interested in that. I want to take a wait and see approach on the actual receiving portion of his workload. But yeah, I mean, I think out of the two of them, it's really tough. Obviously, Dalvin's matchup is better, and Minnesota has been involved in two shootout games now, whereas Tennessee, I mean, outside of a last second half heroic performance from Derrick Henry yesterday, they would have had two games where they were completely out of it. So their defense gives up a ton of points, but the major concern for me, Josh, and maybe we can end the conversation right now with this, is that we don't know who's playing quarterback for the Colts, and that's probably the biggest question mark of all of them.
Yeah, it really is the biggest question mark. So, going to be important to paying attention. Going to be important to pay attention to that throughout the week, and make sure to keep updated on those practice reports.
Okay, we're gonna go down to guys now in between 6K and 7,400. We'll include Naji Harris in that too, because I want to bring him into the mix here. So I guess this range, I mean, we're dealing with a few guys that are experiencing injuries, mainly Josh Jacobs here. His says toe, but that literally should be changed to everything. So FanDuel, just make sure you change that to everything by the end of the week. Um, yeah, other guys in this range that looked pretty competent over the weekend. I think that Chase Edmonds is in a decent spot. I do think that we're going to have this Chase Edmonds slash James Conner debate yet again this week. But any other guys that stand out to you in this range, maybe an Austin Eckler who looked really good yesterday?
Yeah, I think an Austin Eckler stands out, and I know this is going to sound ugly because we haven't done it in the past, but it feels like the tides might be changing a little bit. I really don't mind Damian Harris against that New Orleans team. We saw him get a good amount of touches yesterday. We saw McCaffrey. I mean, McCaffrey and Damian Harris, two totally different athletes, right? But you're getting Damian Harris at a good price tag at 6,200. I can at least get on this train. I also like Antonio Gibson. Again, like he's mispriced because of the touchdown touchdown's not going well for him. But against Buffalo, I think this could be a spot where he picks it up and could be a spot to where he has a really good game. So I like Gibson here too.
Yeah, I would say obviously we have to look at what happens to Darrell Henderson. I won't be going this way in cash games because there's no way you can make me roster Sonny Michel against the Tampa Bay front seven. That sounds like an absolute nightmare. Tyson Williams is very interesting here. Thoughts on, and we can move on here as we go lower on these running backs. Can you imagine playing Lamar and Tyson Williams in one FanDuel lineup together?
No, not even close. Not even a little bit. Can I imagine that? But we'll say Tyson Williams looked really good yesterday. Looked really good. I mean, 13 rushes for 77 yards. That is efficiency at its finest. If Latavius Murray doesn't take that touchdown, then Tyson Williams has a game. So I don't know. It just goes to the point that these Baltimore coaches are saying that it's not the way of football anymore to just lean on one back. But man, I wish they would, because Tyson Williams would be a beast.
Yeah, we saw Devontae Freeman come in on specific packages, and even he looked good. There was a stat last night that said he had like a 20-yard run, and that was his longest run since 2017. Is that right? Maybe it was 2019. I think it was 2017 though, but something crazy. Like, I don't know. He's washed up, and so is Murray's the only one's not washed up in that team. So
yeah,
I still think that you can. We'll talk about some of these Baltimore running backs because I think they're going to be popular in tournaments this week. Yeah, 2017. I was right. So yeah, there you go. What's up, Jared? What's up, Darth Josh? Ask Black Eddie. Andy Silly think he can still quarterback. Yeah, it's Hoodie Josh. Money Mondays are Hoodie Josh days. So that's how we want to go about that.
We just got some breaking news from Adam Schefter. With the 49ers backfield banged up, San Fran is bringing free agent running backs Duke Johnson and Lamar Miller per source.
Gross.
Now, I'm looking. I wonder if he meant like bring him in for workouts, or I don't know. I'm gonna dig deeper here, see if he. Oh, for visits. All right. So they're trying him out. They're bringing him in. How disgusting to talk about Lamar Miller in 2021. I mean, that just feels icky.
Disgusting. So obviously there was no need for Lamar Miller in Washington because they have competent backs as well as Jared Patterson, who they drafted. But yeah, man, dude, can you guys you're going to go through 48 running backs by the season's over, like at this rate.
We really are. Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, like They just also fragile. Like every single one of them. Jamichael got hurt, and then what happened?
Sermon got a
Trey
concussion, so he's
Sermon's
out.
on Sermon's on concussion protocol now. So it's just Elijah Mitchell, and it's just the fantasy gods trying to say, hey, you can try to fade these 49ers running backs all you want. You're gonna have to play them sooner or later, and
Yeah.
that's what they showed us yesterday.
Well,
Or tried to.
thank goodness that they're not on this slate, because I would
Yeah.
have a field day trying to figure that one out. But again,
Oh, but you are gonna have to figure it out because I'm pretty sure they're a primetime game. I mean, they
yeah.
have to be a primetime
Well,
game.
that's a
So
lot
you're
easier.
going to have to figure it out. Yeah, I guess it is a little bit easier, but still.
Oh man. All right. Anybody? Let's see. We can probably skip to the next tier. I will say other interests are probably. Ah man, I don't know. If Justin Fields is in there, I like David Montgomery a bit. I think Jonathan Taylor actually is in a decent spot against Tennessee at 7K. That game should be close. And then we have to take a wait and see on DeAndre Swift's status and how he does tonight. I think he should have a really good performance tonight against Green Bay, so that might take some ownership and send it his way on Sunday. The final guy that I want to touch on is just Naji Harris and the fact that he finally got there this weekend. After only having 15 touches, he still found a way to hit value. His price tag, Josh, jumped up $1,400, so no longer the cheap guy that we always want to roster. And he's not getting anywhere near the touches that I would want to have him in his price, so I think he's a complete fade for me this week.
Yeah, I think so too. Though I am interested to watch, and I think in GPPs it at least deserves some consideration. I think it should have been a 2-touchdown day from Najee Harris, except I think Juju ended up stealing one because he ended up rushing a touchdown.
Yep.
That funky play, but Najee should have had a touchdown there. I feel pretty upset that he didn't have a touchdown during that drive. So if he does, then that day even looks better compared to what we saw yesterday. If he adds a touchdown in there, then he's at 20 plus FanDuel points, and FanDuel would have probably brought him up to 8K instead of 7.5. So I think it's at least something worth monitoring. I'm not scared of his matchup this week necessarily against Cincy. So I don't know. I feel like it's worth a look in GPPs, but outside of that, probably not.
I will take a step back and say that he's not. I shouldn't say I'm fading him on a Monday for sure.
Yeah.
So I will say that I just don't think at this current price tag, the amount of touches that he has is good enough for me to roster him in cash. That's the one thing I'm afraid of. And he puts himself in a range of guys that are all out touching him. He's very close to Nick Chubb as well. Okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Black Eddie says San Francisco needs to reach out to Nelly because he played pretty well at running back in longest yard. So if you guys remember that movie, he did pretty damn well in that game.
Dude, what we need to do, get Frank Gore out of his boxing vibes and get him onto the team.
There you
know
go.
how much Shanahan would absolutely just love Frank Gore having 20 carries a game? It'd be not only Niners dreams, but Shanahan's dreams just come true. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that backfield.
Yeah, didn't he start his career in San Fran too?
Yeah, that's why I said it.
Homecoming. Anyway.
Yep, homecoming indeed.
Let's finish this segment here and talk about guys that are 6K and cheaper at running back. We have, and this is probably the most shocking thing I've seen this season, is that Saquon Barkley is sitting at 6K against Atlanta. Potential breakout spot here? Question mark. I think so.
I kind of think so too. I mean, we're finally seeing those starts of carries getting there. He had 13. No, he had 11. Geez, I'll get this right one of these times. 11 touches game 1. He had 15 touches game 2. We know that they're slowly bringing him along here. So if you can expect him to get somewhere between 17 to 20, I mean, you're in a golden spot at 6K for a runner like Saquon. I will say he had 13 rushes for 57 yards. But a predominant amount of those rushing yards were made off of that one carry where he had that explosive run. So if you take that away, what are you getting from him? Not that much in efficiency-wise. So that's the thing that does scare me a little bit here. But I think you'll never see Saquon at 6K ever again. No. And his odds to score a touchdown in this game, I think, are pretty likely.
I would agree with that. Obviously, Daniel Jones has scored on the ground last week as well as many, many times before. I just think that the main thing I want to bring up is the fact that the price first is great, the matchup second is great against Atlanta, and the third is the fact that they've already played two of the best run defenses in the league. Yeah, I know the outputs weren't great. The yards per carry are not great at all. And like you said, if you take away that run, which is I think was like 30 plus yards, he would have less than 2 yards a carry through the other 12 carries. So, not great numbers for Saquon. He's still trying to figure things out, but I think that they can get him right in a spot here against Atlanta at 6K. So, right off the bat, that price tag stands out to me. And you can do a lot with the rest of your build if you decide to go with a guy like Kyler. So, right now, I'm going to build a solid, like, not two minds lineup, but just kind of spots that I think are a little bit undervalued on the slate. So Saquon Barkley definitely one of those. Does not mean I'm going to play him in cash on Sunday, as this is Monday, but I just want to note the guys that we talked about the most. Anybody else under 6K that look interesting to you?
Yeah, in the same game, actually, Mike Davis at 5,700 didn't necessarily get the touches that I wanted to see. We're seeing Cordarrelle Patterson, who would have thought, get a lot of those touches or share those touches with him. But we did see 7 targets last week, which is encouraging. And we saw him have 4 yards on, he averaged out 4 yards per rush against the Buccaneers. Like against all teams, he did it against the Bucs. So I feel like if you can do it against the Bucs, you can probably do it against this Giants team. And if he's going to get that work in the passing game, then I at least have to consider it. So I like the price tag at 5,700, and I feel like it is a contrarian spot considering that Cordarrelle Patterson is, I think, 300 more expensive, 400 more expensive.
Yeah, so the main thing for me was both of those guys were able to get work in the passing game. Not really like obviously efficient in the fact that he got 7 receptions off 7 targets, but none of those went anywhere for 25 yards. So it's a healthy target share for Mike Davis in the passing game. I like that a lot. 6 targets and 7 targets in the first 2 weeks. Kind of wish, and I think we will start to see touchdowns come to this team. And this is a good spot to where they can actually probably put up some points against the Giants. So the main reason that they've been struggling, obviously, is just because they've been playing good defenses. Now, I don't know. I mean, I think that the Bucks and the Eagles are way better defenses than the Giants. So give me some. I have some Atlanta interest here. I wanted to highlight Josh. I think FanDuel is starting to do multiplayer eligibility, multi-position eligibility, because we see this
Yeah,
with Cordero Patterson. He's a wide receiver running back that never was there before. So guys,
but
that's
never
a
was.
first. He's the first one. I wish it wasn't him, but he's the first one.
What an introduction to this multi-position eligibility for FanDuel is having him be the guy. You could have so many guys too. Like there's so many good options here, and he's the guy. How long before we get Kelsey to be wide
Oh,
receiver and tight end?
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We can make this thing so much more interesting if we go that route. I
Oh
love it.
yeah.
All right, let's see. Other guys that jump off the page, there aren't too many yet because we are so early in the week. But one that obviously stands out is James Conner at 5,300. I know that the sample rushing is worse than it was in week one, and I know that, and it sucks because I was so high on this play coming into this game, but I still think that there's going to be a James Conner breakout spot, and I think if there's anyone, it would be against Jacksonville. So interesting to see how things go. But anybody else below this 5K range that you're interested in?
Oh, below the 5K range.
Yeah, there's not much down here, but
No, there isn't much down here. I will say keep an eye on anything we hear about Michael Carter because he did get a good amount of touches in last week. He ended up having, I think, 15 as a whole. So if he's going to
yep.
have 15 touches, I know it's a super ugly spot against Denver, but if you want me to get contrarian, Jared, I'll get contrarian. This is a spot that I'm at least keeping my eye on.
Yeah, I'm waiting until we'd see anything from the Jets. I don't think they've scored a rushing touchdown yet. Maybe they have. But
Tisk
yeah,
tisk.
tisk tisk. They've only scored 2 touchdowns in total. I think they
Yeah,
both
I
went to Corey
was
Davis.
about to say there's not many touchdowns to pick out of to figure
Yeah,
out if they have scored a rushing touchdown.
it'll be very interesting to see what happens with the Jets moving forward. Okay, let's move on to wide receiver here, where we're going to talk about this top range. Now, the wide receivers we're going to be talking about are going to be in the 7,500 range and above. There's about 8 or so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that are up here. Again, no Green Bay on the slate, and the Chiefs are back on the slate. Now, obviously, Tyreek Hill and DeAndre Hopkins are at the top of this list. Both interesting matchups. I could see myself leaning towards the Tyreek Hill side of things just because I'm afraid of how badly they could beat the brakes off of Jacksonville. So what do you see at the top here? It's kind of weird to see Tyler Lockett up in this range. Cooper Kupp's price tag just skyrocketed, so he's a weird play against Tampa, who still has that 32nd opponent ranking on it. And then we saw, again, that Stephon Diggs still scores a touchdown no matter how bad his matchup is.
Insane, dude. I'm going to get roasted probably because I said they were such bad plays yesterday in Allen and Diggs. But of course, he always finds a way to get one, always. So I think this is another spot where he is in play. I almost called in the Redskins, not the Redskins. The Washington football team defense, at least that secondary, the film that I have watched currently, it looks a little suspect, man. It looks like it's something that could be taken advantage of. So I'm at least going to pay attention to Stephon Diggs this week. I don't know if I'm going to go there. I like the matchups that Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson both have. Or wait, am I going down too far? No, we're above 7,500,
No,
so I can talk about these guys. I like Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Just like always, like clockwork, Adam Thielen scored a touchdown yesterday. I mean, when do we not expect him to score a touchdown? His touchdown, everyone was saying how I'm blanking on the word that I'm supposed to use. The touchdown variance was supposed to go down this season for him because he scored so many touchdowns last season, but it really doesn't look like it's changing at all. It looks like it's exactly the same to what we were seeing last year. So he's going to continue to get a lot of red zone targets. I don't think that's any different this week against Seattle. I do like the Adam Thielen play. And I also think JJ is in play as well. I mean, you're still seeing that same workload. He got a touchdown yesterday too. So both of these guys are they're almost like the new version of Lockett and DK Metcalf.
Oh, they are.
I guess not the new version, but like
they are.
The mini version of Lockett and Metcalf.
I think that Minnesota's receivers are a little bit more consistent together than the Seattle receivers are. Seattle's more like you're gonna beat like Russ. Oh, the way that Russ always thinks is he's thinking like matchup. So if he finds what he likes, he's gonna continue to go back there over and over and over again until it doesn't work anymore. Usually teams just aren't able to figure it out by that time, or that something just happens chemistry wise where that takes place. Whereas in Minnesota, they have Dalvin Cook as their primary weapon on offense, but when they get into shootout type scenarios, they don't have the other guys. And like I know KJ Osborne came out and showed that he was a very good wide receiver coming out through the first 2 weeks, but losing Irv Smith, it just dilutes that player pool to where they have to throw to these guys like 40% combined. So you're going to see a lot of Minnesota action moving forward in this with their defense now. We've seen them in 2 shootouts, and I think that's a trend. It's almost kind of similar to the Cowboys of last year, where every single game that they're involved in is a shootout scenario. Minnesota and Seattle could be that this week, and they could be the one that outscores Tampa Bay, LA in the afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. I can get behind it.
Kai says Thielen is Cooper Kupp in 4 years. Do you mean Kupp is Thielen? I don't know what
he meant it reversed. I hope he meant it reversed, because if not, then I need to go buy Thielen in every single league. What a trajectory.
Anyway, just make it fun, Kai. Just make it fun. Moving down the list here, Chris Godwin fell off the face of the planet price-wise. He was the second highest expensive receiver, and he didn't even have a bad game against Atlanta. He scored a touchdown off of 5 targets. Obviously, that's not what you want necessarily, but we knew this coming in. We knew that they were going to spread the ball around. We saw that Gronk got a score and 2 scores, and we saw that Mike Evans got 2 scores. So like that's going to happen week to week. And for people that are saying you bank on Gronk 2 touchdowns per game, that's not going to happen anymore. It's over.
It's done.
Everybody's going to get off. Yeah, it's cut off. I gave you guys 2 weeks. I made a call last night. We're all good. Yeah. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, like it's a carousel, right? So eventually one of these guys is going to go off. It was Mike Evans the other day. Chris Godwin, you're not overly thrilled with this, especially in tournaments. And I think he was 8,500 on the week 2 slate. So dropping 1,200 and still scoring a touchdown is something to keep an eye on. But yeah, for me, I always have a tough time, uh, rostering any Buccaneer unless they're on the primetime slates, which even then is a carousel. So, any interest for you in any of these LA Rams Tampa Bay receivers this week? I know it's a sidebar question, but I do think it's important because there are a lot of guys in this range.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys in this range. I think that it's important to remember that Tom Brady needs to keep his wide receivers happy, which I kind of got the feeling of last week. I was realizing
Evans.
that, like, hey, Evans, they need to keep him happy. They need to keep him like fed in terms of getting enough receptions.
Yep.
They're going to go his way this week. And so it made sense that he got the 2 touchdowns. I should have been on that call earlier last week. I think now it goes to Antonio Brown, who didn't see a lot of work. He kind of got the Mike Evans role from week 1 in that the fact that he just wasn't looked at in the passing game. Yep. I know I'm fast forwarding a little bit to another section of the pricing, but Antonio Brown at $6K just feels like a misprice, especially when we know what that upside is. And honestly, he should be the guy that is the most open out of any of these wide receivers and have the best matchup out of any of these wide receivers. So for me, if I'm going to one guy in Tampa Bay, it's going to be Antonio Brown. And fun fact, Tom Brady has thrown 4 passing touchdowns in 4 straight regular season games. Last time that was done, Dan Marino was able to do it. So he's looking to break that record. He's looking to get the 5th and be the only quarterback who has done it 5 times. And so I think that is a little narrative that I am paying attention to this week, just because we know that Brady's all about breaking the records.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that point and saying that we know that he knows that, and he knows that we know that. So it's a mutual thing. He knows that. He knows that that's a thing. So again, going back to Tom Brady's price, he's $7,800 on FanDuel, which is I think $400 cheaper than he was last week. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But anyway, Tom Brady against the Rams, not the best matchup on paper, but this game it definitely has some shootout potential, Josh. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think that you can definitely roster those guys in tournaments for sure. Let's move down the list.
And it is it's the little Brady revenge tour, right?
Oh,
Got the face off against the Falcons. Now it's the Rams. It's just him doing matchups against all his old Super Bowl teams.
100% agree.
When does he face off against the Eagles? When does that happen?
I don't know. That's a good question. But I hope that game doesn't end up 10-3. So hopefully that's a better output there. Kai says Brady is 499 yards short of Drew Brees' all-time record. Plays the Patriots in 2 weeks.
Just they lined him up for a whole revenge tour here. That's what they did. Yeah. The NFL is very precise with their scheduling. They know what they're doing.
I definitely agree with that. Do you think there's any merit to being like, hey, maybe he only throws for 200 yards in this spot?
I don't think so.
I agree. No. I agree. Anyway, we'll move down the list here and talk
2
about
weeks
receivers.
away, right? So it's 2 is games. Is it week 4 that he has the matchup?
I don't know, but if it was, then he would throw for 400 yards in this spot.
Exactly, he would throw for 498.
You said week 4. It's week 4.
Okay, perfect. So he throws for 498 this week, and then gets that 1 yard against the Patriots. It's the revenge tour, and it's going to work out for him pretty well, I think.
Yeah, guys, don't forget about Tom Brady stacks this week. You just got to make sure you get the right pieces. That's all, which is the hardest part. Now going through the list, we have Deonte Johnson sitting at 7K, who was questionable with a knee during the game, came back and still played there. He gets Cincinnati, who he's historically been very good against. I think that some of these Steelers pass catching options are in play. Saw Juju squander the touchdown on the ground, and I wasn't too happy about that, especially for Naji. But moving down the list here, Josh, some guys that stand out to me are most notably the Tennessee brothers, and then down the list, possibly opening up some value here for guys like the Cleveland receivers if Odell and Jarvis are both out. I guess we'd have to know if Baker was out in order to make that call. We'll get to those guys in a little bit, but anybody here outside of these Tennessee Titans receivers that you're looking at in the 6Ks?
Yeah, I like the Titans wide receivers. I think they're in a good spot. I like Cortland Sutton as well at 6,900. We saw that he is taking over that wide receiver 1 role, and he didn't even get the touchdown last week. So, or yesterday. So, he added a touchdown to that box score, and he has an absolutely phenomenal performance. I also like the price. You're gonna feel disgusting when I say this. I can already see the head shake coming. But Marvin Jones Jr. at 6,300 has touchdowns in back-to-back weeks, has 9+ targets in back-to-back weeks, and gets this Arizona team that kind of got lit up yesterday in the passing game. I mean, we saw Thielen and Justin Jefferson have their way. So I think that Jones could be a guy who has a really good game here. So I like Marvin Jones as well.
Yeah, I can't deny the back-to-back touchdown games for Jones. Seems to be the favorite target of Trevor Lawrence. Also, James O'Shaughnessy left the game yesterday after one catch, so he was the favorite target coming into the week. Now it's Marvin Jones. We'll see how that moves, and obviously we know that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have to throw for basically the entire game. Whoever gets the kickoff first, Jacksonville's going to be pretty much playing from behind the entire game. So I like that.
Poor
Uh,
Jacksonville.
yeah, poor Jacksonville. Mike Williams looked very, 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 very good against the Dallas Cowboys. It seems like that target share actually is for real, Josh, finally. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, double-digit targets in back-to-back games for Mike Williams, including 2 touchdowns. We knew that this guy was going to come back. I thought it was last year, so I was 1 year behind or 1 year ahead of things. But he was going to come back, find that rapport with Justin Herbert, and then the touchdown expectancy was going to swing high in the opposite direction. So Mike Williams always a guy to look at now moving forward as we move along through the weeks here. See Cordero Patterson finally make the player pool at wide receiver. Anybody down in this range? I know you spoke on Antonio Brown. Maybe we talk about a guy like Jamar Chase who's found the end zone twice now.
Yeah, Jamar Chase has been looking good, and we've seen this Pittsburgh team. I'm not going to say torched. They weren't torched in week one, but we did see Derek Carr look really good against Pittsburgh. So I think Joe Burrow has potential to look good. I think Jamar Chase has that big play upside. I mean, even the touchdown yesterday was a big play. So, something to look out for. Very boomer bust, in my opinion, but, when you get that boom in your GPP lineups, you feel really good about it. I want to talk about one guy below this 6K mark in Rondale Moore, who had an absolute game yesterday. He's priced at 5,600 in week one. This is a quote, or this is a tweet by Adam Levitan that our AP put in the chat. In week one, Rondale Moore ran 14 routes on 36 Kyler dropbacks. That was 38% of his dropbacks. In week two, he got up to 24 routes on 41 dropbacks. That's 58% of the dropbacks. So we're seeing that number improve week after week. Who knows if it could improve even more this week? And if it does, I mean, man, the upside at this price tag is insane.
Yeah, I love Rondale. I love him this week. I'm interested to see what his price tag is for DraftKings. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Yeah, I think I've been on this guy ever since he got drafted to the Cardinals, and now that he's there in that system, I can comfortably say that he will be the wide receiver 2 by week 5, if not week 6. I think that they have found ways to use him. He's that kind of gadget play where you can line him up out wide, put him in the slot, run screens with him, run end arounds with him, maybe even a wildcat at one point with Kyler. That'd be pretty insane to watch because they're like the exact same size and the same body type. So anyway, Rondale Moore can do it all, and he finally showed, like, I would say week one was a pretty good representation of like the upside that he brings to the table. Now we saw last week incredibly efficient and scored the touchdown. So at 5,600, I just see this guy as the second wide receiver on this team, and we're not going to get him at this price very often. He probably is a guy that's closer to 6,500 by the end of the season.
For sure. Oh, geez. Our AP is on fire today, putting notes in the chat. TJ Yeldon also visiting the 49ers today. So just the whole group of misfits is coming to town, I guess. That's ugly, man. That's very, very ugly. Also, Packers have elevated St. Brown from the practice squad to the active roster for game day.
Okay. That I don't know why they would do that necessarily, but it probably has to do with Zadarius Smith's being out. So,
how do you say his first name, Jared? I need it. I was going to try it, but I just felt like I was going to fail tremendously.
St. Brown?
Yeah.
Equanimous.
Oh, see, you nailed it. You knew it right off the bat. I had no clue. I was going to say Equanimous, or I didn't know what I was going to go with, but that's why I just went with St. Brown.
That's why they call him EQ. So,
that makes sense.
All right. Interesting note. I don't think that affects the Monday slate at all. but that's
No.
interesting from a roster standpoint to note that. Anything else? I know that we have a note in here that says Nico Collins is on the IR. Do we have Houston on this slate? I don't think we do. No, he's
No,
playing as a prime
Houston's
time on
on
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Then down the list here, I think interesting spots that we can touch on very briefly, and we have to kind of keep rolling here because we are running out of time as usual. Michael Pittman at 5,600 against Tennessee. I know that they've been dealing now with a few injuries for their wide receiver group, and we just had another one over the weekend. So, again, this one has a lot to do with whether or not Carson Wentz actually plays. But, man, just look at all of these injuries for Indianapolis. It's actually crazy. Courtney Davis, Desmond Patton, Gary Jennings, J.J. Nelson, T.Y. Hilton. Man, it's just the list keeps going. Paris Campbell was the one that left the game the other day with an abdomen injury. So, yeah, they just literally have nothing. So maybe if Carson Wentz plays, these could be some guys to look to at the bottom for tournaments. Anything else in relation to this really dumpster dive area for wide receiver?
Yeah, I will go even further down from you and say KJ Osborne definitely in play at 5,100 for that Vikings team. Jacoby Myers at 5,300. I played DJ Moore in the 1 p.m. only lineup. That worked out well against that Saints banged up defense. So I think Jacoby Myers might be in play. To go to your Michael Pittman point, I'll say Zach Pascal, another guy in play, has had 3 touchdowns over the first 2 weeks. The cheap range for wide receiver, just in general, like below 6K, I feel like you can make a good lineup with these guys below 6K. You can take Rondale Moore, you can take KJ Osborne, and then I'd go to Jacoby Myers. And I feel like that's a solid team where all those wide receivers should be above 6K or six. I mean, should be closer to 6K than they are 5K.
Yep. So this is horrifically disgusting, but we do have to keep an eye on the Detroit Lions pass catchers that plays in tonight as well as into week 4. They don't have Tyrell Williams tonight. He's out. And Khalif Raymond, who is their other streaker, is questionable tonight with a thigh injury. Thigh injuries with those kind of players that like to stretch the field are always dangerous to exploit. So the rest of these guys, it's really bad, Josh, and we're talking about tournament only plays. But the only wide receivers left on the roster for the Lions, if that situation happens, would be Quintez Cephas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Trinity Benson, in addition to TJ Hawkinson. So for those of you who don't know who Benson is, I don't either. And I will find out what he does tonight. So
that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, so
that's funny.
They're pulling these guys out of nowhere, kind of like the 49ers running backs. So we'll see how things go for Detroit tonight and the rest of the week.
I will say, if Detroit looks good, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a beast, dude. Guy was amazing in college, and I'm excited to see him play. I didn't think he'd get the work this season. I thought he was more of a guy who would probably show his skill set year 2 or year 3. But the fact that we had the potential to see him on the field tonight is encouraging, and I think if he looks good and it seems like he's getting a good amount of targets, then he's going to be in play for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. As well as they'll always be trailing. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
All right.
That's always a way to go.
Let's move on to tight end here. Sadly, Travis Kelsey is not wide receiver eligible. I wish that was the case. That would make things so much more interesting, I would say. Yeah. With him at 8,500, I tweeted his touchdown last night saying that he was the best tight end of all time. Didn't get any flack for that, and I'm surprised. I'm kind of disappointed in you guys because I felt like that was actually contrarian. Maybe I'm wrong here, but Travis looks amazing as always. Gets a decent spot here. It's not really something I would love because he is going to see a lot of Melvin Ingram, I believe, right? Is that right? I think it is.
Yeah, it is.
So he should see him a lot, but again, this dude's just the best at what he does. So the targets aren't necessarily there, but the touchdowns have been there. So that's the main thing that matters. He got that 50, 60-yard touchdown last night, which was absolutely insane. If that wasn't for that interception on Saturday, I would have said that was the best play of the weekend. But yeah, moving down the list here, you got Darren Waller sitting at the top. Gronkowski is the 3rd highest tight end on the board against LA. That's hilarious. Screenshot that in 2021 and call it a day. Any guys in this range you want to discuss?
I mean, I know you said no, but Gronk at 6'5" is going to be interesting, and more so interesting just because I'm excited to see how many people roster him here and feel good about it and tout it
Yeah,
coming into the
feeling good
week.
about it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I certainly won't be feeling good about it, but I don't know. It's certainly interesting that he's up at this price tag now. It all depends on what we see from Detroit today, but we saw Hawkinson get 11 targets in week 1, so if we see a similar workload in week 2, I really don't care what matchup it is. I think that he is kind of matchup proof, and I'll be buying into it. Also, don't mind Pitts at 6,200. I know we're slowly seeing him progress, but it's just a matter of time before he gets a touchdown, and
Yep.
this would be a good opportunity to do it. And then Fant as well, another guy above 6K that I can certainly get behind. Saw him get that touchdown yesterday, went 4 for 6, looked pretty good in the game. So lots of options, honestly, compared to last week where I felt ugly rostering anyone.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Fant right now as I was last weekend against Jacksonville. I think that he's a fine play, but if you're really looking for a guy at 6K that's only going to get you 6 targets, like his targets went down against Jacksonville when Jerry
Yeah.
Jeudy was out. So very interesting to see how that's going to play out there. I think that Teddy Bridgewater is the answer, but Fant is. I saw some chats about it being clearly Fant for this range, and I just don't know if I agree necessarily, especially with Kelsey on the slate. Um, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll move down the list here. Again, guys, this is a week 1 first look. Josh and I only were going off of knowledge and the prices we're seeing for the first time. So if we make mistakes, we will obviously own up to them later on in the week.
Yep,
But
definitely.
moving forward here, Tyler Higby put up a disappointing performance yesterday after seeing 100% of the snaps in week 1. A lot to do with Cooper Kupp, obviously. And then moving down the list, I don't see much that I like at all. Mark Andrews sticks out like a sore thumb here. He shouldn't be a 6K against Detroit. And Jared Cook is a very interesting play. I wish the volume was there. It seemed like we saw his name a lot. We heard his name a lot, but he just didn't have nearly enough. He probably should have had a touchdown too, so we can talk about that. Um, talk about things that went the wrong way. Jared Cook had a touchdown and then taunted, but then got called for the illegal shift as well. So it's like a triple whammy that took away that touchdown. But anybody
Dare I
this
say triple double banger?
yeah, seriously. Um, nobody, even if some of these guys are good plays down here, first of all, I can't see any of them. Maybe Cole Kmet, but we don't know who's playing quarterback. I don't see anybody down here that I like at all, Josh, and I think that it would be best to just say, hey, just play Kelsey and move on. Or maybe it's a week where we can roster Kelsey and Waller in tournaments together.
Dude, you missed the best guy in this range, Max Williams at 4,700. Not
Yeah, yeah.
only is he at 4,700, Sean's number 47 there, his receiving yards per game
Yeah.
is also at 47. So I mean it's 47 because he got 94 and then didn't get anything week 1. It's an ugly spot, guys. I'm mostly being sarcastic towards Jared, but I don't know. It's at least something that I saw him on waiver wires when I was looking through my fantasy leagues today, and I was like, I mean, I'm weak at tight end. Like I've seen worse options to spend FAAB on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's at least worth something bringing up at 4,700.
It's worth bringing up. I will say there are more guys in that rotation now than there have been in past. Me saying like Cardinals weapons. Uh, the guy that I would always think that was ahead of him was Darrell Daniels, who's sitting at 4K. Yeah, I mean, I can get behind it to an extent. I think he's a solid GPP flyer if you want to include him in your stacks because it's probably a decent spot where you don't necessarily have to run it back with Jacksonville. But Max Williams 4,700 would be like probably the absolute dumpster dive that I would consider in tournaments, and that's very very scary
Yeah.
after only getting 1 target and no catches in the first week.
This just ends. Speaking of tight ends, has nothing to do with the week 3 slate or the main slate, but Eagles have placed Zach Ertz on the reserve COVID-19 list. So
Okay.
I don't know what primetime game they have, but Dallas Goedert certainly in play.
Certainly in play. I agree. Okay, let's talk about defenses, and we'll leave like 5 minutes plus of time to talk about the Monday Night Football game. For those of you who are RotoRadar NFL members, I will be doing something specifically special for you. for the article that'll be out shortly, as well as taking a little bit more time behind the paywall to cover tonight's Green Bay versus Detroit game. Let's talk about defense, Josh, for week 3. Denver sitting at the top at 5K against New York. Not a surprise after Zach Wilson threw 4 picks. They probably announced this price tag before they even threw 4 picks. So
yeah,
interesting up there. Steelers up there again. New England up there again. Cardinals ramped up as well, 4,600. That's the first team that sticks out to me as to where I'd be like, oh, I kind of want to go there and not break my salary. Anything that you're seeing that pops out on the page, I think so. A lot of this is reactionary to what happens with quarterbacks later in the week. So if you see Chicago Bears QB injury, if you see Cleveland, both of those teams in the same game are dealing with quarterbacks. Either of those defenses could be fine if they start their backup situation. And then down the list, I don't know. I mean, anything sticking out to you?
Yeah, I will say this this price tag on the Dolphins seems super enticing at 3,800 purely because we did just get the news that Derek Carr had his MRI and John Gruden said that he's questionable and said that Josh Jacobs is very questionable for Sunday's game. I always love the designation between the guy that is questionable and a guy that is very questionable.
Yeah. I wish that we had Tennessee at a cheaper price tag at 4,500. I'm trying to take advantage of a possible missing QB scenario. I think that, I don't think Derek Carr sits by any means, but if that happens, then because Marcus Mariota's on the IR, so that would make things really interesting for the Raiders. And who would play quarterback? Do we even know? Do they have a third quarterback on their roster?
I don't know. I have no clue who their third quarterback would be.
Oh, it's Peterman.
Oh, yeah, it is Nathan Peterman. You're right. I completely blanked on that, but they said it on the broadcast yesterday. We just got this news in, and I guess it's not really news. It's something that we should have known. EQ St. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Did you know they're brothers?
I did.
Yeah. They're both active. Like, that's Battle of the Brothers, Monday Night Football, man. Yep. I can't believe you didn't. If you knew, you should have said something. It's your fault. I didn't know.
He's not playing. Equanimeous isn't playing tonight. Maybe they throw him in there on special teams. So maybe there's a shot that we can watch a kickoff attempt and they run into each other. That would be the extent of that. Because they both play special teams. But both St. Browns, they picked very weird first names, but they are fun to pronounce. Not as good DFS players, though. I would much rather take the Lions player.
Kyber said EQ will Zay Jones it up.
No.
Don't put those bad vibes in the vortex right now. Not for Monday Night Football.
All right. So I know I didn't fill this out, but guys, obviously you heard all of our takes for the week 1 rough first look here. So if you do have any questions or concerns throughout the week, or you always just want to kind of follow back, I took a look at the week 1 or the week 2 first look from Monday while I was writing my article, just to make sure that I covered my bases. So it's always a refresher to see. And Josh, I can say this in pure confidence that this is actually our most popular video of the week. So just something to note moving forward, guys. If you do, Josh and I have been pretty spot on our first look takes, and we've actually had members use some of these plays and builds in their rosters in accordance with the articles that come out later to win some pretty big money over the first couple of weeks. So if you're taking notes right now, that's great. But if you want to watch back, just go to RotoRadar Daily Fantasy Sports on YouTube, and you'll find it up here early tomorrow morning.